Dan Heng's true Vidyadhara form, revealed after accepting the residual powers from the previous reincarnation of Imbibitor Lunae. Upon accepting the majestic horned crown atop his forehead, he must accept all the merits and faults attributed to that person. However, he was never himself. Imbibitor Lunae is a 5-star imaginary character that specializes in dealing massive amounts of damage, whether it's AoE or single target. He follows the destruction path. For ease of reference, I would simply call Imbibitor Lunae as Dan Heng. A destruction class character would typically sacrifice something for increased damage output. In Dan Heng's specific case, he would suffer from low defense stats while demanding high amounts of skill points per turn. As an imaginary element character, this means that if Dan Heng is able to deplete an enemy's toughness bar, he will deal minor amounts of extra damage and inflict imprisonment debuff. Imaginary element's break effect is known to have the strongest crowd control compared to the other elements. Imprisonment would add an extra 30% action delay over the default 25% action delay from inflicting a weakness break on an enemy. It also applies a 10% slow debuff, making the action delay more potent. Looking at Dan Heng's whole kit, there's one thing that stands out the most. His third enhanced basic attack called Fulgurant Leap, which is enabled after using his skill 3 times. Using level 10 traces, Fulgurant Leap has a 500% attack modifier on the main target and 180% attack modifier on adjacent targets, making it easily surpass his ultimate's damage output. Due to its 7-hit mechanic, it is easily able to fully stack the effects of both his talent and skill. Fulgurant Leap has 4 break units on the main target. To put that into perspective, it depletes the enemy's toughness bar equivalent to using 4 basic attacks. An elite enemy's toughness bar is usually equivalent to 10 break units. If we consider the following, that both Dan Heng's talent and skill has buff stacking mechanics based on the amounts of hits his attack performs, and his ultimate attack performs 3 hits, while also providing 2 special skill points. It is easy to figure out that by using Dan Heng's ultimate as a stepping stone to stack as much damage % increase from his talent, he would hit the damage ceiling of Fulgurant Leap. This makes it mandatory to combo his ultimate followed by his 3rd enhanced basic attack in a single turn. Therefore, Dan Heng starts with his ultimate, followed by 4 Fulgurant Leaps. This would net him a total of 165 energy for a 4-turn ultimate rotation. You might be wondering, shouldn't we just replace 1 Fulgurant Leap into a basic attack? If you really need the SP, you can. Otherwise, it is a considerable damage loss. Before we start, here's some quick disclaimer. Just pause if you want to read it. As everyone would probably have guessed already, Dan Heng's best LC is Brighter Than the Sun. Brighter Than the Sun is currently the 5-star Destruction LC with the highest base attack of 635. To put that into perspective, it can be considered a direct times 1.9 damage increase for Dan Heng. However, what really sets his signature LC apart from other LC options is the fact that it provides 12% energy regeneration at max stacks. It reduces his 4-turn ultimate rotation into 3 turns. This is Dan Heng's stats versus 1 target and versus 2 targets using a rank 1 Brighter Than the Sun. Dan Heng deals roughly 40% more damage if fighting 2 targets. So not only does he have competitive single target damage, he also boasts very strong AoE capabilities. But of course, it's hard to get a grasp of Dan Heng's damage output without another character to compare to. Luckily, we have Blade, who is also known for both his competitive single target damage and great AoE damage dealing capabilities. This is Blade's minimum stats using his signature LC at rank 1. Before proceeding with the comparisons, I would like to emphasize on the words, Blade's minimum stats. It means that the calculation assumes he is just free hitting the enemy without taking any damage himself. It also assumes that he doesn't use any premium healer. So what I'm trying to say is that Blade could drastically improve his performance if we add assumptions that he is getting hit frequently, and if he is with a strong healer like Luocha. Not to mention, Blade barely uses any SP while Dan Heng is extremely hungry for SP. With that out of the way, let's compare them. As you can see, Dan Heng deals roughly 57% more damage than Blade on a single target, and roughly 46% more damage than Blade if there are 2 targets. Now let's take a look at Dan Heng's best free-to-play LC. You probably have guessed it already as well. That's gonna be Fall of an Aeon, a light cone that can be purchased from Herta's shop. This is Dan Heng's stats versus 1 target, and versus 2 targets using a rank 5 Fall of an Aeon. Rank 1 Brighter Than the Sun is roughly 10% stronger than rank 5 Fall of an Aeon. Finally, our special mention, Under the Blue Sky. This is Dan Heng's stats versus 1 target and versus 2 targets using a rank 5 Under the Blue Sky. Rank 5 Fall of an Aeon is roughly 4% stronger than rank 5 Under the Blue Sky. There is barely any damage difference, but depending on the stage, it can be difficult to trigger the kill condition of Under the Blue Sky LC. Here's a quick zero context LC ranking for Dan Heng. Dan Heng takes being SP negative to the next level. If he uses a 4-turn ultimate rotation, he would consume a total of 10 SP per rotation. If he uses a 3-turn ultimate rotation, he would consume a total of 7 SP per rotation. This even gets worse if you unlock his second Eidolon. What this basically means is that Dan Heng requires every single one of his teammates to be SP positive. We will keep this in mind as we continue forward. Yukong to Dan Heng is like how Asta is to Himeko, or like how Tingyun is to Tingyun, or like how Bronya is to Blade. There is such a strong synergy between Yukong and Dan Heng that, as much as possible, you shouldn't separate them. It is pretty obvious that Dan Heng's ultimate followed up by Fulgurant Leap is his most damaging combo. To maximize the burst damage of this setup, he would need to sync his combo with both of Yukong's buffs. This would result in one of the strongest, if not the strongest burst damage in a single turn produced by only 2 characters. There is just one problem. How do we make Yukong an SP positive character? You can just choose from these rotations. Remember that if Dan Heng is using a 4-turn ultimate rotation, Yukong should also have a 4-turn ultimate rotation. Same thing for a 3-turn ultimate rotation. Speed tuning Yukong is also important. If you plan to use an attack boots on Dan Heng, it is recommended that Yukong is speed tuned towards your sustain. This is the recommended setup. However, if your Dan Heng has his second Eidolon unlocked, you'd want Yukong to be speed tuned to Dan Heng. This allows Dan Heng to perform his 3-action combo, Fulgurant Leap to Ultimate to Fulgurant Leap, within the 2 stacks of Yukong's buffs. When talking about SP-positive characters, nothing beats Pela. Pela doesn't really need to use her skill unless you are dispelling the target's buff, or she is E4 and is trying to boost the damage of herself or another ice damage dealer. Therefore, if paired with Dan Heng, Pela will be a true SP-positive character, only using her basic attacks while still offering great uptime on her defense reduction debuff. The 2-turn ultimate rotation build for Pela is the most ideal build in this team. Adding Tingyun to Dan Heng's team can totally change your strategy and at the same time improve it significantly. Tingyun offers 3 things. 1. Obviously damage boost through her skill and ultimate. 2. Hyper SP generation due to innate high-speed stats and passive effects. 3. The energy she provides improves your strategy with Dan Heng. 1 and 2 are pretty straightforward, so I will elaborate more on number 3. If Dan Heng is built slow with attack boots while his team is built extremely fast, this means that Dan Heng would struggle to sync his ultimate rotation with the team. As you probably have guessed already, Tingyun fixes this through her ultimate, which provides energy. For example, everyone's ultimate is ready except for Dan Heng's because he is too slow. Tingyun simply uses her ultimate on him, which acts as a turn replacement, therefore completely synchronizing Dan Heng with the whole team. There are rules to using Tingyun, however. 1. Yukong must be speed-tuned to the other character that is not Dan Heng or Tingyun herself. 2. Since Yukong is not speed-tuned to Dan Heng due to his slow build, this strategy doesn't work well if Dan Heng's second Eidolon is unlocked. As a destruction character, Dan Heng will innately have high aggro. After all, destruction has the second highest passive taunt out of all the classes in the game. This makes it really important to have a strong sustain in the team. All healers in the game are SP positive. Gepard can be a great alternative too. Just make sure that they are all built with extremely high speed stats and are equipped with energy regen rope. This makes it possible for them to sustain the team by just spamming basic attacks and only using their ultimate when needed. The amount of damage boost his Eidolons provide will ultimately depend on who you team Dan Heng with. For my calculations, I simply assumed that he would be teamed with Yukong. E1 is a 12% damage increase. E1 to E2 is a 45% damage increase. The reason why E1 to E2 is such a strong damage increase is due to the fact that Dan Heng would technically reduce his 4-turn ultimate rotation into a 3-turn rotation. Since Dan Heng is compressing his 4-turn ultimate rotation into 3 turns, he would still need a total of 10 SP for each of his rotations. This would mean that if his teammates are only as fast as him, they could only generate 9 SP within 3 turns. Granted, everyone is using basic attacks. As you would have already guessed, having at least 2 extremely fast SP-positive characters would allow you to get those extra SPs needed. 1 extra SP for Dan Heng, and 1 extra SP to cast Yukong's skill before her ultimate. But as mentioned earlier, if you really want to abuse this 3-action combo of Dan Heng with Yukong's buffs, you need to speed-tune Yukong with Dan Heng. Therefore, the other 2 SP-positive characters are the ones needed to be extremely fast. It is also important to note that when starting Yukong and Dan Heng's combo, you need exactly 5 SP when Yukong's turn starts. -1 SP when Yukong uses her skill followed by her ultimate. -3 SP when Dan Heng uses Fulgurant Leap. +2 SP when Dan Heng uses his ultimate. -3 SP when Dan Heng finishes the combo with another Fulgurant Leap, meaning they end their combo with 0 SP left. If you are using his signature LC, which already reduces his 4-turn ultimate rotation into 3, I highly suggest you continue using a 3-turn rotation instead of reducing it to 2. The problem with a 2-turn ultimate rotation with his signature LC is that it would still eat a total of 7 SP. If his team isn't fast enough, it means they could only generate 6 SP within 2 turns, assuming everyone uses basic attack. Not to mention, it brings the problem that you need to have a way for Yukong to do a 2-turn ultimate rotation to keep up with Dan Heng, or adjust everyone else's ultimate rotation into a 4-turn rotation. As for his other Eidolons, they are quite straightforward damage increase. E6, however, will provide another massive damage boost. Overall, Dan Heng is a very strong character. His gameplay is rewarding, granted that you play around his mechanics. Should you try to pull or build Dan Heng if you get the chance? Yes and no. Yes, because if he is played at his best, he would most likely outdamage every single damage dealer in the game. As a character that uses a standard critical build, this means that he is extremely buff receptive compared to someone like Kafka or Blade. So comparing his damage to those two can be misleading. After all, things significantly change when factoring in a full team composition. So what I'm trying to say is, while you can easily gauge their differences based on individual performance, Dan Heng could be significantly stronger in practice compared to his numbers on paper. No, because if you don't like babysitting a character, then Dan Heng is not for you. Dan Heng removes a lot of other options when it comes to his teammates. This could mean that some of your other favorite characters won't be compatible with him. Having Welt could also be a reason to not roll for him. Despite being a Nihility character, Welt is very competitive when it comes to dealing damage. So if you don't particularly like Dan Heng, he can be safely skipped. And that's it for now. Like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe for more content.